Hi everyone, Peter Giannatos here at the Charlotte Chess Center. I want to bring you another lesson today using a club members' games from the Tuesday night tournament. We're going to have a game between two around 1,700 rated players. I think currently they're slightly underneath the 1,700 rating range, but I know they've both been over 1,700 before. So I think it's a nice game. I mean, in the sense that there were a lot of possibilities, especially tactical possibilities later in the game that are very entertaining to look at. And we'll go along the way and see what the players could have done differently and in terms of the strategies they chose and how to proceed in the game. And then even when the game explodes into these tactical fireworks, we can really see some variations there and so forth. So I hope that you can pick up a few things from this game. And these lectures are designed to sort of show you how players at certain rating ranges play. So white in this game is Ali Shirzad, who has started to play here at the Charlotte Chess Center, I think about a year ago. And he played, I guess, as a middle schooler or high schooler, and now he's a college graduate and so forth. And he's coming back to chess, and he's really improved a lot over the last year. I think he came back, I think, as like an 800 rated player. He gained 1,000 points, so he's really doing well in chess. And David Blackwelder is also a guy who's really putting a time and effort into improving his game. So these are really, they're not young upstarts, but they're middle-aged, upstarts who are really interested in getting better at chess and really putting time into it. So it's a pretty entertaining game by two players who are really improving at the game. David, who's playing the black pieces here, he also contributes to our blog. We have a blogger blog, Charlotte Chess Center does, and he gives his experience as an adult improving at chess, coming up from like 1,000 level to now the 1,700 level and the struggles with that and everything. So that's always a good read. And if you're interested, you can read our blog. We all contribute, a lot of the members here contribute to the blog. So there's information on there for all skill levels. But let's get to the game. So Ali is he likes to attack. He likes attacking positions. He seems to like original positions because I've played him many times in blitz and so forth. So I know he likes that. So he begins with the move F4. So a lot of my students will sort of joke to me like, oh, you think that move's garbage or whatever. I sort of do, but it's not the move itself, right? It's like F4 is not the end of the world. The move itself may not be the best move to play on move one, but it's surely not, it doesn't lose. Let's just put it like that. So I just think that it offers black too easy of a path to equality. And, but I mean, in a sense, there's nothing particularly wrong with F4. It doesn't lose. And that's the so-called bird opening. So David played D5, which is one of many possibilities. Knight to F3, knight to F6, pawn E3, pawn to C5, gaining space in the center, bishop to E2, knight to C6. And I'd like to say that this exact setup here is actually a reversed Dutch defense. And the Dutch defense is, of course, after D4 on move one, black goes F5. And white will often go C4, knight F6, knight F3, pawn E6, G3, and let's say bishop E7 is the classical Dutch. And if we go to the position that occurred in the game, it's actually a reverse classical Dutch, except black has not committed to G6 as white would have committed to G3 in the Dutch. So these lines are considered to be quite harmless for black. So knight to C6, castle, and E6. Okay. So solid position for both sides, no issues. Pawn to B3, I think it's sensible to figure out a way how you're going to develop this bishop. I know in the standard classical Dutch, the way that you would develop would be to go pawn to let's say D3, and then try to eventually expand with E4. And the famous YouTuber Simon Williams is a professional at the classical Dutch, and this is essentially a reverse classical Dutch. So b3 seems okay, and then here they've played an aggressive move, but I'm not entirely sure it's a good one, because I don't like that it gives up some central squares. So Dave played d4. And the reason I say I'm not sure about that move, and the reason why I don't really like it that much, is because while it does potentially block the eventual bishop on b2, I don't really like that it's given up central squares in return, at least this early in the game, where Black's king is still in the center and development could have easily been the last move instead of moving the pawn forward. So I would say I don't like the move d4 this early, at least, because you're conceding squares in the center and you still have development. You still have development issues. So a very sensible move by White here to take advantage of those light squares would be the move knight to a3, a slightly obscure move, but it solves the problem of where this knight is going to go. The knight from a3 can go into c4, and then from c4 could come into e5. And in these positions, in these structures, quite often it's that knight on the queen's knight that has difficulty entering the game. And here, to me, it just seems like there's an easy path into the game now. So I don't like the move d4. And in fact, I don't like Ali's follow-up to this move because it gives squares back. Okay, so he should, again, he could have played bishop to b2 here, and again, followed with this knight maneuver. But I think I would just start with the knight maneuver. Just get the queen's knight into the game, and then complete development. And I think White has a perfectly fine position here. I would say White is slightly better because you look at Black's pieces. The dark bishop is sort of blocked in this way, and the light bishop's blocked in this way. So I think that in that position, White would be actually slightly better. No really bad minor pieces, and central squares for the pieces. So I think White is doing well there. So he conceded squares back by going pawn to d3, and Dave correctly took on e3, giving himself some central squares for his pieces. I think if Ali had it his way, his next move would have been e4, and then let's say we go bishop to e7. Surely he would have gone e4, not allowing that trade, and this pawn actually gets in the way of Black's minor pieces. So Dave very correctly took on e3. And again, d3 was a positional mistake because, let's say after knight a3, Black decides to take on e3. Of course, White would capture back. Well, Black managed to trade pawns, but the thing is, his pieces are still not out. I mean, you could argue that he gets this nice square for his knight on e4, but White has loads of strong squares for his own pieces and open diagonals for the bishops, right? So, that I think would have been a stronger way for White to proceed. But okay, d3, Dave correctly took, giving himself some squares. Knight to d5, bishop went back to c1, and then a strong move here, queen to f6. Turns out after this sort of fishing for the rook here on a1, it turns out that Black gets into a little bit of hot water, and actually he obtained a losing position in the next 5 moves. And the reason for this is after c3, which is the only legitimate way to protect the rook on a1, David took, and Ali took. Queen's in danger, and there's threats of discoveries on the rook. So he took, and the queen took, and then rook to b1. And the thing is that Black won a pawn, but you see the king is still in the center of the board. And Black has better pawn structure. Black has an extra pawn. But the one factor against Black in this position is his king safety. And here he needed to play very carefully so that didn't become an issue. And he didn't. And unfortunately, he played knight to d4, again, neglecting development, which thereby neglects your king safety, because You're not developing so you can castle. And played the move knight to d4. I think the queen is going to get tempoed here by either bishop to b2 or bishop to d2. So I think this would be a good idea to pull the queen out of the c3 square and then develop sensibly and try to castle, one way or the other. But instead, he played knight to d4, bishop to b2, a very logical move. And after knight takes e2, queen takes e2, and moving the queen, you can see white has loads of compensation for the pawn because you have a pin on the e-pawn. You have the possibility of attacking that pin piece. The bishop on b2 is a strong piece which helps hold down black's king side and stops development. And so this is a very dangerous situation for black to be in because he's not prepared to castle. So after queen a5, white played f5, very strong move. And then here, Dave was really asking for trouble, and he took a pawn here on a2. And again, that is a losing move, but also a just optically, I mean, you're behind in development, your king's in the middle. To get away with that move, there's something inside of you that's got to say, I cannot get away with that move, not with my king in the center, not with coming under fire in that way, and not with my queen totally out of the action. Okay. So here, I think Ali misplayed his attack. He had a really great option here, which I think would have just been killer if he'd have played it in this move order. Ali took on e6, and after bishop takes, played knight g5, which allows black to castle and sort of escape some of the trouble here. If he'd have just switched the move order, since this pawn is in a pin and it's not going to move anyway, and just to play knight g5 first, the game would just be over here. Because you're not helping black develop the queen's bishop, so black is not prepared to castle here. And the pieces are really flowing into the game here. There's knights pressuring f7, so is the rook. The knight's also pressuring e6, as well as the pawn and the queen. And because castling's not an option, black would love to just develop and castle, even at the cost of a pawn or two, just to get the king out of the middle. But that's not possible here. And so, for example, I mean, I'm not sure what to suggest here for black because the position is collapsing. I mean, you can't go, let's say, queen takes b3 to try to guard the e6 point, because after the simple move bishop takes g7, attacking the rook in the corner and the queen by discovery, the game is over. And you can't just generically develop with bishop to d7, because now when white crashes through, there's no time for castling like in the game, because the bishop is hanging, f7 is hanging, and again, once again, this position is just simply over. For example, bishop takes e6, and here, I mean, knight takes e6 is probably fine, but I think knight takes f7 is even better, because here you're attacking the bishop, you're attacking the rook, the bishop cannot capture the knight due to the pin, and this is just a lost cause here. And so, yes, knight g5 would have just sealed the deal, but instead, Ali played takes first, which allows black to develop, and then after knight g5, Dave got out of there. Okay, he got out of there. Okay, so that was a close call by black, who ended up winning this game. It still is a close call, but that would have ended it immediately. Here, white still has an advantage due to black's lack of development and still somewhat unsafe king, but it's not as great as it would have been after the initial knight to g5. So knight e6 and rook to e8. Again, if pawn takes, queen takes check, and it's obvious here that white is in the driver's seat because black's pieces are out of play and black's king is also not safe. Okay, and so Dave tried to play the move rook to e8, and I really like this move. It's a very inspiring move. Ali here took on f7, which is a courageous move because as you may now notice, the rook on b1 is not only hanging, but it's also with check. But to justify this move, you actually need some serious calculation, because what ended up happening was Dave said, okay, well, I'll take that rook with check. And then Ali stepped up with his king, but the problem now is after bishop to d6, White has not enough for the sacrifice material. It just doesn't. And Black is doing perfectly fine here, because it's arguable that White's king is not safer than Black's, and Black is up material. So a very cool move here, but I should say series of moves, would have been the following, which is very interesting. So drop the rook back to f1. Okay, we're attacking the queen here. And there's a pretty forced move here. I mean, queen does not have a lot of squares to go to. So let's say queen to a2. And now the very powerful move, queen to e5. Now, it's very obvious that queen c7 is a huge threat. It's checkmate in one. So in order to stop this checkmate in one threat, there are two viable moves, or two possible moves, I should even. There's rook to e7. Okay, that stops. It stops it momentarily. And queen to a5, which is much more sensible, actually. Getting the queen back into the game and stopping this checkmate. If rook to e7, I think White can just take on c5 with check. And then when the king moves, take the bishop on f8. And White has a fantastic position here. The rook happens to be hanging on e7, and currently it's two pieces for the rook, and the black king is still somewhat exposed here. Okay. So in fact, maybe bishop here check first might also have been a strong move. Actually, it is stronger, because after bishop check and king here, it's possible that we have the move knight to c7 check. I was considering rook to a1, where there's a checkmate threat on a7, but I think that it's possible that move is, what am I talking about? After check, we have a checkmate. Yeah, nothing exotic about that. So queen a5 would be the only move here. And now a very unique sequence of moves, beginning with queen to f5. Not easy to see, not easy to foresee. Okay, so here we have loads of discovered threats. It turns out it's not so easy to play a move here for Black, because if you play the move, let's say king to b8, then once again, bishop to e5 check, and king to a8, and then this is a pretty big, devastating attack here for White, because you're picking up a rook, you're doing so with check, and the whole Black position collapses. So after queen a5, queen f5, the only move is g6, so that any discovered check could be met by taking the queen. Then we could back away to, let's say the g4 square. Again, the threats of the discoveries, very hard for Black to escape because of the move bishop to e5 if the king tries to go into b8. So h5 and then queen h3. And again, these discoveries are very real, and White has loads of compensation here for the exchange. In fact, I think White is, I would say White is in the driver's seat. There's a lot of attack here, and practically speaking, it's not easy for Black to play, because you see, it's not just the discoveries, but there's also now an attack on the rook, and White forced that move, g6. There was not really another option for Black, because these discoveries are too powerful. If Black tries to give back the rook for the knight here, that's not going to work due to back rank problems. But the best black's going to have here is to give away the bishop, but even that doesn't solve anything, because after this, still going to be back rank problems. So when you're down material, it's sort of the onus is on you to find the correct attacking plan. And after this, it turns out that the rook takes f7 move was perfectly fine by white, but the follow-up king f2 just wasn't. And after bishop to d6, bishop takes g7, black untangled the position here. Queen takes b3, attacks the knight here, and David is willing to give the material back, at least the rook on h8 for the knight on e6, just to simplify the game and make sure that his king is safe. He's got these very, very, very strong pawns here. Okay, all pass pawns ready to roll. Take the rook, we take the knight, and then Ali offered the queen trade, which I believe is the final straw, because after c4, a very strong move, but I might add, these pawns get rolling, and it's hard to suggest a move here because I believe a white's position is lost at this point. But after the queen trade, black's pawns are much faster. So you see this exchange, and each side has 3 passed pawns, but unfortunately it's the one that creates the most threats first, which gives the advantage. So here black obviously has the advantage with this pawn only 2 spaces away from promoting, and no easy way for white to stop it. So tried rook to h4. There's an old saying, rooks belong behind passed pawns. The logical move would be to go here and push the pawn forward, but white may have some hope of defending by trying to defend from the front, but it just doesn't look like that's going to work. After pawn to b2, rook to b1, a5, a4, a3, a2. That would have won. I like Dave's move as well. He played a5 and just gets those pawns rolling. Okay, rook c4 check happened anyway. King to b8. Again, defending from the front, but these 2 connected pawns are way too advanced and too active for white to have any chance of a draw here, despite the material equality. So rook to b1, and this pretty much transposes to exactly what we were talking about. And white resigned here. So this game did not really feature too much, I would say, strategically. It really fired up tactically. I would say the only strategic thing I could mention in this game was this move in the opening, d4. And the reason I say that that's a positional mistake for black is because it concedes central squares too early, and black's behind in development. Other than that, the game really heated up tactically around this point. And again, I think it would have been more useful for black to develop their pieces instead of playing the move knight to d4. And after this, black got into some really hot water. In fact, he got a losing position after queen takes a2, and I think this position's already lost anyway. But here, if we remember, the most accurate move is not to assist black in developing in the attack, but to go knight to g5 first, attacking the pin piece. And as my good friend, Ben Feingold, when he was here in Charlotte, serving as a GM in residence for 2 quarters of 2015 and 2016, he always used to scold the kids, don't take pin pieces, don't take pin pieces, don't take pin pieces. I mean, he couldn't tell these kids enough not to take free pieces. So, not free pieces, pinned pieces. And so this would be a very instructive point here. Even when you're attacking, you don't want to assist black in any way to get developed and possibly castled. So knight to g5 first would have been much stronger. And skipping to the last critical moment after queen to b1, this sequence of moves, rook to f1, queen a2 forced to save the queen, and now queen to d4 threatening checkmate, where queen a5 is the only move, and then the very powerful queen f5 threatening discovered checks on the king, and we looked at those variations. And that was really White's proper attacking plan in the position, and that would have been very strong for White had he have found that. But I really admired the play from both sides. They really were out to get each other, and I like that. I mean, it's a good fighting spirit, and it was a good fighting game. And in chess, I mean, no matter what level you are, you don't always do everything right, and it's just sort of very important to take these games, look at what you missed, change it, say, hey, what can I do to avoid missing that in the future? Add it to your arsenal of tactical patterns and ideas, and just continue learning. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll try to I guess our first tier would be to get to 1,000 subscribers. I think we're slightly under 200 right now. We'll try to keep things fresh. We'll try to put information and things going on at the club up on the YouTube channel, maybe some blitz matches or whatever. We'll try to keep it fresh, but I hope to also bring you some game analysis of games here at the club, and hopefully that helps you out and helps you in whatever your improvement plans are for your chess. Hopefully that helps you in that. So bye for tonight, and look for our next video. Subscribe to our channel, share with your friends, and I appreciate it. And